Welcome to the Only God Stories podcast, where we believe testimonies are powerful. In this podcast, your faith will be built as we hear from people from all walks of life who recognize the power of God in their lives. To hear more testimonies or for the opportunity to share a story of your own, check us out on our website at onlygodstories.org. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Only God Stories podcast. I am so excited for today's podcast. My name is Tiffany Elder. I am co-hosting with my amazing husband, Joseph, today, and our guest is actually really special to me. She is my cousin, Morgan Walker, and Morgan is, first of all, an incredible human being, an incredible child of God. She is amazing, beautiful, and she has spent some time overseas on missions, and she's here today to talk about some of her stories that she encountered while doing so and a little bit about that ministry. So excited to have you, Morgan. Welcome to the podcast. Go ahead and share just a little bit more about yourself with us.
Thank you. That was such a wonderful introduction. I'm blushing. Thank you, guys. I'm Morgan, and like Tiffany said, I spent some time overseas in Thailand. So I went to the University of Arkansas, graduated in 2021, and then a few months later, I went to Chiang Mai, Thailand, northern Thailand, and was there for a year. I'm back now and back in Northwest Arkansas, born and raised, and loving it here. I'm working in the corporate space now, and love just spending time with family. All my family's here, and have started playing guitar since I've been back from Thailand. So that's been a fun little endeavor. And I'm a big writer and reader. So I was an English creative writing major. So I love reading anything, writing. Right now it's been songwriting with my guitar playing. So my most creative endeavor.
I'm going to throw you a curveball. I'm throwing you a curveball already out of the gate. I got to know, you're a reader. You like to write. What book are you reading now, or what did you recently read? You're like, man, this was amazing. Give us a recommendation. We've been reading this year, so we got to hear it.
Okay, so this one is a little bit of a return to my roots, a little childhood nostalgia. I've been reading the Chronicles of Narnia.
That's nice.
I love it.
It's almost like this security blanket. I don't know. It's been a really
I love that.
little comforting read at night. That's a great one. Y'all could read with your kids if you haven't before.
We bought it. You have to. Okay, I'm now hiring Morgan to go talk to our 9-year-old son because we've been trying to talk him into reading it. So that's your new task. After we stop recording, Morgan's going to go talk to our son for us.
I'm on it.
Idea. And Morgan, you said you flew by really fast, where you said you went to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and there's some listeners already. They're like, "Oh gosh, that's something I could never do." And so I want you to even just take us a little bit further, or a little bit to kind of that turning point in the story of what really sparked this passion or this desire to be able to go somewhere from a missions perspective, and why did you choose a kind of partner with the ministry that you did? And just take us to that spot and how those things kind of transpired.
Yeah, totally. It's funny you mentioned listeners being like, "Oh, I could never do that," because that was me. That was me for most of my life. Like, okay, I'm not a goer. I'm a sender. Like, I will support financially and pray for all my friends. Like, growing up, I did a couple little missions trips, but mostly was like, oh yeah, that's for like crazy missionaries who wear chacos and like are
wear chacos. Whoa,
yeah,
calm down. Chaco generation over here.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Oh, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but basically just had this like image in my mind of like, oh, missionaries are so other. Like, that is not for me.
Yeah.
And then I think it was college where God really started changing my heart and revealing, oh, Morgan, like, I call all of my children into missions, whether that's overseas, whether that's right in your neighborhood, in your own life. There's always opportunity to join him where he's already working. And so the decision to go overseas was a really natural evolution of the Holy Spirit's work in my heart. Like I said, college was a big turning point where I was mobilized by a lot of people in my life. And so different friends and roommates and like college ministers that I was meeting, they just kind of invited me, hey, let's learn about the world together. Let's learn what the Bible says about the world. Let's learn about God's heart for the world. Let's learn about our role as senders, but also as as welcomers, as people who pray, as people who might be open to going. And so little by little, my heart started changing. I was joining different prayer groups. I was joining different Bible studies. And I was like, oh my word, God invites us into this beautiful kingdom work, again, wherever we are. But there is opportunity overseas as well. And so my ministry that I went with is called Crew. Some listeners might be more familiar with Campus Crusade for Christ, but it's now called Crew. And I was friends with my team leaders. So the people that ended up leading my team overseas, they were in East Asia for a time, but because of COVID, they were sent home. And in that period, reconnected with them, was introduced to them through another friend, started developing a friendship, and they're like, hey, we are recruiting to go back overseas. Would you be interested in hearing more? And keep in mind, like throughout college, this is my senior year when I was having this conversation with them. And throughout college, God had slowly been changing my heart, like piquing my curiosity and interest of like, look what I'm doing around the world, Morgan. Look what I'm doing. Look what you can be a part of. And so meeting this couple, their names are the Drakes, really challenged me of like, whoa, wait, they're presenting this opportunity, asking me to consider it, not pressuring me. And I think that was a big thing too. Like one thing they said that really solidified my decision to say yes was that, hey, God doesn't need you overseas. He's going to fulfill.
So good.
Yeah. He's going to fulfill his great commission, regardless of if you join us or not. And we're not to say like what you're supposed to do, but what an amazing opportunity and honor to join him. If that's where he leads you. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like that just lifted this weird pressure and like standard and expectation that I'd had in my head, and actually brought it down into an accessible, like, oh, this is an invitation. And so they invited me to consider going overseas with them with Crew. I had never done anything with Crew throughout my undergrad. But the more I learned about the ministry and asked questions and was praying and seeking counsel, it just became simply that invitation, an invitation to join God. And so I was like, wow, I see God extending this. I feel peace about it. I think I'm going to say yes. So again, I came from like not knowing or understanding my role in missions, not thinking it was for me, to understanding, oh my gosh, God loves the world. He's working in every corner of the world. He also invites us to join him.
So good.
And the pressure's off. Like it's his work. Yeah. It's his kingdom. But it's a joy to get to step into that with him. So said yes, went with Crew, and Crew offers an internship option. So I went as an intern for a year. That's a very condensed version of my yes. Yeah.
That's awesome though. Like a year in Thailand, that's a huge commitment, especially for a young adult. And like just getting started out fresh out of, college. And I love though how you said, I thought I was a sender, or I was a sender. You went from a sender and God slowly softened your heart to being a goer. And now you're turning back around on the other side of that. Probably makes you a more compassionate sender also, which is pretty beautiful. But I love how you talked about how it was just like little moments throughout your college career that kind of culminated in this ask from these people. And that's what I love about Only God Stories, is that sometimes they're just these little moments that get us into a much bigger picture down the road. And it's not, sometimes we think Only God Story is this big moment where something amazing happened. And it's not necessarily like that. It's a lot of little moments that you have to really hold on to and remember. And that's where the heart change happens. So I love that, Morgan. And sometimes we have people on this podcast who do just have one pretty incredible story, but your story is a little different, where you went and experienced a year in another country doing missions. Once again, like you said, God didn't need you, but you got to be a part of it. He chooses to use us. He doesn't have to, and that does take the pressure off. But I would just love to open the floor to you, Morgan. What were some of the more incredible stories while you were there, or not more incredible, but what were some of those Only God moments while you were in Thailand that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I have 3 stories that came to mind as I was just thinking and praying about what to share. And the first thing I want to talk about is just the Thai staff that we worked alongside. And so Crew is primarily focused on reaching college students, and that was our role overseas. We joined the existing Crew ministry made up of Thai staff, came in as foreigners, partnered with them, and then went and reached campuses in Chiang Mai. And the faith and tenacity and humility of the Thai staff always pointed to God's glory for me. And the first exchange I had with one of my coworkers, her name is Pipa, and she was doing a 40-day fast when we arrived. And that was actually very common for the Thai staff that we worked with. They would do semi-regular, twice a year, they would do a 40-day fast. And so we're meeting her for the first time. She's, existing on water and broth and smoothies and doing a liquid fast. And I remember asking her, Pipa, like, how has that been for you? What have you been learning? What's been going on? And she looked at me, immediately started crying. It was like, Morgan, I'm doing this for my disciples. Like, I'm praying and interceding for my disciples. And in that moment, I was completely humbled and floored of like,
wow.
Oh, you are fasting on behalf of your ministry, on behalf of your disciples. And I just immediately, and this happened all year, where I was just challenged over and over with my Western ideals or like my own assumptions. And I was like, man, when's the last time I fasted on behalf of somebody else?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think ever.
Yeah. American church, like, people fast. Oh, I have a decision to make. Let me fast. And not that that's a good thing. Like, you should seek God in a variety of ways. But yeah, that's a very, not common in the American church.
Especially for 40 days.
On behalf of somebody else for 40 days. Wow.
Yes. Yes. And so that immediately challenged me. And then just throughout hearing her story, she came from a Buddhist family, which is very common. Thailand it's estimated between like 88 and 95% Buddhist, like practicing Buddhist or culturally Buddhist, I should say. And so she came from that Buddhist background, that Buddhist family, discovered Christ through Crew when she was in college herself, and then started following Christ, like leaving behind family, leaving behind cultural comforts, leaving behind this security of being known within the Buddhist community. And she's doing this 40-day fast on behalf of her disciples. And so only God can supply that kind of sacrifice and, again, humility. And so that was just the first moment where I really felt God grab my heart and say, look what I'm doing in this country. Look how I'm moving and how I'm rescuing and challenging and preserving the believers here, the local believers here. And so, that in and of itself is just where I was like, whoa, this year is going to be for real. Like, this is going to be a true dive into relying on God and his provision and trusting him. So yeah, that was one of the first instances where I was like, okay, this is legit. And that kind of leads me into this next story. So we were doing campus ministry, as I mentioned, and my coworker and I, we went out in twos usually to go sharing on campus. And I went with my coworker. Her name's Aleem, and she's actually Canadian and was part of the foreign component of the team. And we went to campus and we took some Uno cards and we had some candy, and it was during finals week. So we were waiting for students to need a study break and like come over, and we were in the canteen area, the cafeteria. And that's how we usually engage students was, hey, like, come and talk to us, hang out with us, tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll tell you a little bit about us and the ministry that we're with. And we'd share the gospel and just give them an introduction to who God is. And then we'd follow up with that interest as the year went on. But this day in particular, we are sitting in the cafeteria, not a ton of students around, and there was a worker. There's a Dairy Queen. So Dairy Queen is really popular in Thailand.
Oh, wow.
Like,
That's hilarious.
And the South.
You drive long enough on the South, you'll find a Dairy Queen.
It might be old. The register might not work, but you'll find one. I'm actually
We are not sponsored
Dairy
by
Queen
Dairy
right
Queen,
my
and
house.
you can get one. I'm just kidding. But it's big there. Okay, all right. We digress.
It's big there. And we noticed like one of the shift workers from Dairy Queen was taking her break, and we were like, hey, let's just like go see if she wants to chat, if she wants to hang out. And so we went over to her, like, hey, like introduced ourselves, said our little Thai greeting, and she immediately just lit up, and she was so excited. She's like, oh my goodness, I've been wanting to practice my English, and I haven't ever talked to a foreigner. And her English, by the way, was like immaculate. We were like, oh my gosh, you could have never known that you'd never spoken with foreigners before. So we just get to talking, and we're playing, we're hanging out. We tell her a little bit about the ministry that we're with and what we're doing. And she looked at us and she was like, I would love to know more about God. We're like, okay, well, we can do that. Like, let's get dinner next week. Let's hang out. And we left that day, Aleem and I both sensing that the Holy Spirit was at work. Like, you could just tell in her countenance. Her name is TT, and TT's countenance, okay, something's going on. She has this lightness about her. She has this joy. What are you doing, Lord? Like, what's happening here? And so the next night, or the next week, we went out to dinner with her, sat down, and kind of explained, hey, we would love to pray before we eat this meal, and kind of explained what prayer was. She had a ton of questions about who we were praying to, who God is, the relationship to Jesus. And then after we pray, she looks at us and she goes, thank you for praying. I think I met you guys so that I could learn more about Jesus. And we're like,
come on.
We would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's like softball.
Sounds about right.
Classes. Yeah. And she's like, can you teach me how to pray? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Let's go.
So here begins this relationship with TT. Come to find out, her sister's a student at the university, Tika. She's like, hey, my sister, she has a lot of interest in Christianity. We learned about it in school. We had a world religions class, learned about Christianity for one day, but we don't know very much. Like, we've never had anybody be able to teach us or answer questions. Throughout the rest of the year, we were able just to form this relationship with TT and her sister Tika. They were so curious, so hungry, had never had anybody be able to answer these questions about who God is, hearing the gospel for the first time. All these things that we take for granted, I think, living in America and growing up in America. And so to have that privilege and that honor to see, oh my word, God has been pursuing them for a while. Like, he has been feeding this curiosity. He's been working in their hearts. He's given us an opportunity to step in for a season to help guide them and disciple them. And then trusting them now in his care too, and trusting that they're being poured into. We've connected them with a church in their hometown, with some believers in their hometown. And that's the dream too, for them to feel connected to the local body, to Thai believers and Thai community. And that was a big heart of our ministry as well. Even though we were coming in as foreigners, we had this partnership, and we were working alongside the Thai believers. We were working with Thai churches. And that's just really beautiful too, to learn from them and to be challenged by their faith, as I mentioned with Peepaw's fast. So yeah, just very, very humbling.
So good.
Yeah.
I feel like I love how you said that God had been pursuing them for such a long time. And for me, I'm so quick to forget the passage where it says Jesus leaves the 99 to find the one. But just remembering that God is pursuing me personally, but he does whatever it takes to be able to find his sheep, or his sheep that are lost. And just a beautiful picture. Thank you for that story. I think you've got one more you want to share. Is that right?
Yeah, one more story. So we focus primarily on college students, but we also had these partnerships with churches, local bodies there. And we had the opportunity to go into a village with one of the churches. This pastor, his name's Pi. You'll notice I'm saying P before all these names. That's just a term of respect, similar to Mr. or Mrs. So now you guys know.
We've been learned up to that.
A Thai person, yeah. So Pi was a pastor of a local church, and his ministry outside of within the city was reaching tribes in the surrounding hills. So Chiang Mai is very hilly. Has a lot of mountains, and has a lot of tribal groups that are nearby. I think there's over 10, maybe 10 to 12 different indigenous tribes with their own dialects and their own customs and all these things. And so he led our team into the village. He said, hey, there's this grandmother in one of the villages that we've been pursuing her village for 10 years. We've been sending pastors there, Thai pastors there. We've been providing resources. We've been answering questions. And she told us that she's ready to receive Christ. Would you guys want to come and be a part of that? And we're like,
Heck yes,
10 years.
Yes.
10 years. Let's go.
You get to come experience this moment. That's amazing.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
So we pack up in these trucks and vans and buses, and we're going up into this like one track dirt road mountainous village, probably 3 hours north of where we were. And so we get to this village, and Pipai leads us into the area where the homes are, and we've got other pastors coming that have been pursuing this village and ministering to this village. And this grandmother, her name is Pipi. That is the term for grandmother in her dialect, which she was of the Karen people group. And Pipi's, talking in Karen. They're translating back into Thai, then translating back into English. And they said she wants you all to come into her home, which there's like 18 of us, like 18 foreigners. And
Wow.
she's like, please come into my home. So we go into her home, and they said she was 94 years old. She had lived in this village her whole life. She had been following kind of this animistic religion, like kind of a merge between Buddhism and the worship of spirits. She had been grown up in that and been worshiping that her whole life. And she, there on the floor of her home, was like, I'm ready to follow Jesus. And so the two pastors go over, they pray with her. She's receiving Christ. She's wearing this bracelet that's significant of her attachment to one of the spirits, and she asks them to cut it off. They're cutting off the bracelet.
Praise the Lord.
She asked our group to go into the village and dismantle this fire, like an altar almost. Yeah, like this fire pit that they had built an altar into. She said, please go dismantle that. That's where they would offer food and drink to spirits. Please go destroy it. So we leave her home. We go tear down. The men in our group are tearing down this altar, and we're praying. All the other villagers are coming out and watching. And we're like, is this, like, what are they thinking that we're doing? Like, what's happening? And the pastor explains, well, Pipi, she's like the matriarch of this village. She's one of the oldest women here. She's been here her whole life. If she says to do it, like, we can do it. Like, she's leading the way for this village. Come to find out, her son wants to receive Christ. The same day, they pray with him. We're ministering to him. We're praying. And I was just so struck, again, about how God pursues us. Like, God has been pursuing this woman in the remote villages of northern Thailand. She's 94. It's never too late for Christ to redeem. It's never too late. Just inspiring. And for 10 years of these pastors to be ministering and serving this community, and they were doing that across multiple villages. They had outreach going all over remote areas of northern Thailand. And so to see that, you just get a picture of where you are in God's story. Like, God is working in huge ways everywhere, all age groups, all ethnicities, every dialect. Like, he has the gospel ready in everybody's heart language, heart posture. And it's just a matter of stepping into that and being available and just like, oh, I'm here. God's working. And we're getting to witness the change that he's bringing in people's lives. It's just encouraging.
Incredible.
And blows me away even thinking about it now.
Wow.
That is powerful. And
Well, I just have to know before you go on, Joseph, because I know there's more.
I have
Did
so many
that
things
give
I
you,
wanna say.
this is like, there's so many questions I could ask, but did that give you kind of like, whenever you read the Old Testament and you read through like the kings of Judah, the ones that followed God and made sure the altars were torn down, does that give you like a new and fresh perspective? Like,
Oh my gosh.
that's incredible to experience that in this day and age. Like, not very many Americans especially can say that they've experienced doing something like that, Morgan. That's incredible.
Oh yeah. Such a powerful image now as I return to those stories of like, God does tear down the idols in our life. And physically will tear down altars to other gods,
Yeah.
and one day they will all be torn down, you know? So
That's
it's
right.
just, yeah, yeah,
And
really
that's
powerful.
like there's like there's so many pieces there. I think even being able to go back and like ask ourselves the question of, are we willing to do something that takes a decade for one soul to the Lord?
I thought the same thing.
Like,
are you willing? If it takes 10 years, are you willing?
That's a question, because the reality is that I have people on my list that if you were to say, well, for that person, would you do it for 10 years? I'd be like, hands down, absolutely. But for somebody you don't even know yet, like, and you get to know, there's something really powerful about that. And I think that's got to be a driving force, or even the back of people's minds, or missionaries' minds when they go somewhere, is, man, this is for the long haul. And sometimes the things happen quick. A lot of times it's a slow process. And when even the group that you're with, I mean, these are people who are taking their families, sometimes families, sometimes on their own, but they're leaving the known, the comfortable, and they're stepping out in faith and saying, hey, Lord, will you use me in this way? And not only just like repositioning themselves physically, but really virtually all of these ministries, you have to raise your own support, so that way you have money to live, and that way you have money to eat. And you and some people know those things, some people don't know those things, but when you're in these other countries, and so when they do that, when they step out on their own, to be able to raise their own support and to be there, like, how does that faith just inspire you? Or like, what does that do to you as you see others that have been there for several years and what will eventually be decades?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the Thai staff that's there, they are responsible for raising all their support. And something that was really challenging and convicting was learning that they live on about 60% of their support, because Thailand, very small amount of believers. Like, it's an unreached country. There's less than 2% believers there. And so
2%.
their pool of financial support within their own country is very small. And so the opportunity to partner with them financially and support them financially is, again, an honor, just from the abundance of wealth that we have in the West. And so yeah, that was really challenging. And then there's some families there, Thai families and foreign families from America and Canada, that have stayed behind and are trusting God for their provision and their support. Yeah, I mean, it really challenged you to believe and hold firm to the truth that God is a provider, that He gives us everything we need in every season.
That's right.
When you're raising support and living on support, you're experiencing that in a way that you might not be aware of in your day-to-day life, like getting a check from a company. So living on that kind of dependence and provision is, again, extremely humbling. Like, I mean, if I could sum up the year in a word, it would be humbling. But yeah, these people that are living on that full time presents an opportunity to come alongside and partner out of the gifts that God's given us. So yeah, there's an opportunity to do that, definitely.
So good, man. And I'm humbled by, like you said, their pool of people for the local Thai staff. Their pool of people is small, and I think that any kind of support conversation in certain even pockets of America can be awkward and feel weird, just because people are, I mean, frankly, funny with their money. But what's pretty incredible, whatever you think, you hear the 1%, you think the 1% of America. But if you're listening on a phone right now, you're like in the 1% of the world from a financial sense, truly, because there are so many people in other countries who have nowhere near what we have. And there are amazing programs out there that can support people like this, who they're wanting to be like their own local missionaries in these countries that very, very few Christians. So Morgan, like, how do we support people like that? How do we support the local Thai staff? Or whatever you say, anybody out there, you can find it on our website too. We will link to it. But for now, Morgan, just tell us a little bit on how to do that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, prayers for the staff is an amazing way you can support, just that they would have their needs met, and also just be held together by the Lord as they engage obstacles and trials and work in a culture that opposes Christianity in a lot of areas. But you can give financially if you choose to partner through Crew's website, so give.crew.org. And there are different codes where you can give directly to like Chiang Mai's Crew ministry, their operations budget, where they're putting on camps and retreats and raising up local leaders. You can give to them. You can also give to individual Thai staff. If you want any of their information, I can also get that. If you reach out to Tiffany and Joseph, I can supply those as well. But can definitely give a more general link to Chiang Mai's ministry and what they're doing in the city is just amazing. So it'd be an amazing opportunity to partner with them.
That's so good. And we all have a role to play. You said at the beginning, there's senders, there's givers, or there's senders, there's goers. I think you even said supporters, like people support receivers, I think is what you said earlier.
Welcome.
And we all have a role to play. And I just want to even just push on that a little bit for everybody that's listening. You have a role to play. If you don't feel like you have a role in missions, you have a role in missions. It's just a matter of determining what is that for you. I'll just give a quick stat for us. There's about 3 billion people that are currently unreached or don't have access to the gospel. And so my encouragement is if somebody says, hey, let's have a conversation about missions in the globe, man, definitely dial in on that as well and say, hey, I want to listen and be a part of it. And then like Morgan said, everything that she mentioned will be in our show notes. You guys will link that so you can have the opportunity to be able to give to Crew and some of the Chiang Mai specific team that's there. Obviously, they have other options as well. But if you're encouraged by either this episode or even our previous episodes, we invite you to be able to like and to subscribe and then go ahead and make a comment. We read the comments and we're encouraged by them, whatever you do. And we know that it blesses others as well. And I'll just leave us with this last thought. Morgan said earlier that she said that God he's rescuing, he's preserving, and he's using the Thai people. And that was such a powerful picture of just how the Lord sees us and how he sees his children. And I think that's our invitation today. So, hey, thanks again for being on the Only God Stories podcast, Morgan. We're so glad you're here. And we'll see everybody in another couple weeks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Only God Stories podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media as we share more stories like these. And don't forget to check out our website at onlygodstories.org for more information on how you can share how the power of God has moved in your life.